Ethan Reynolds jolted awake to the sound of hammering. At first, he thought it was part of a half-formed dream, some construction-themed nightmare where jackhammers and drills played background music to his REM cycle. But then he heard voices, shrill, commanding voices, coming from outside his backyard. His confusion turned into unease as he threw on a t-shirt and rushed to the window. What he saw made his brain short-circuit. A team of strangers was swarming his backyard like ants at a picnic, unfolding chairs, assembling a buffet table, even setting up a DJ booth in the corner. A half-built balloon arch loomed over it all, casting a ridiculous yet ominous presence over what was supposed to be his private property. And there, standing at the center of the madness like a self-appointed event coordinator, was Karen. Ethan didn't need coffee anymore. His blood pressure shot through the roof as he stormed outside, jaw clenched. Karen turned at the sound of the screen door slamming. "Oh, good. You're awake," she called out, her tone so casual it might as well have been a greeting between friends. "Listen, I was hoping you wouldn't be home, but since you are, you might as well help." She gestured toward a stack of unopened boxes like she was doing him a favor. "We need to get these decorations up before noon." Ethan blinked. Once. Twice. Nope, still reality. "Karen," he said, his voice slow and measured, because if he let himself speak freely, it would be a lot less polite. "What the hell is going on?" She sighed, giving him a look usually reserved for toddlers who just couldn't grasp why they shouldn't eat dirt. "It's my son's birthday party." He waited for the explanation that would somehow justify why the hell it was happening in his backyard. Karen simply beamed and swept her arms around like a magician revealing a grand trick. "I decided your yard is just perfect for the event. It's bigger, has more shade, and let's be honest, your house looks way better in pictures than mine." Ethan let out a short, humorless laugh, running a hand down his face. He was still groggy, still trying to process the sheer audacity standing in front of him. "You decided?" "Yes. I meant to tell you earlier, but I figured you wouldn't mind," Karen chirped. "You're not using the space anyway, and my guests will be so much more comfortable here." His eye twitched. Before he could even begin explaining how trespassing laws worked, a man carrying a cooler full of drinks passed by and gave him a polite nod, as if he was the intruder on his own property. "Get out," Ethan said, his voice firm. Karen's smile wavered. "Excuse me? Get out of my yard." Her mouth fell open, her eyes widening with genuine indignation, as if he had just refused to donate a kidney to her cause. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's one day." She rolled her eyes. "I'll even let you join the party if you want." Ethan's pulse pounded. "You'll let me?" Karen huffed. "My son deserves a special day, and this is the only way to make it happen." "You wouldn't ruin a kid's birthday, would you?" Ethan's gaze flicked to her son, Brandon, standing near the fence, scrolling through his phone, looking completely uninterested in the spectacle his mother was creating. "Yeah, he looks devastated," Ethan deadpanned. "Now get your people and your stuff off my property before I call the cops." Karen's expression darkened. "You wouldn't." He folded his arms. "Watch me." The next morning, Ethan awoke to an uneasy silence. No hammering, no Karen barking orders, no strangers invading his yard. It should have been a relief, but instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. He had lived next to Karen long enough to know she wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. Still, he tried to shake off the lingering tension, brewed himself a cup of coffee, and stepped onto his porch, scanning the street for any signs of her next move. That's when he saw the police car. 2 uniformed officers stood at his front door, their expressions unreadable. He exhaled sharply, already suspecting what this was about. He set his mug down on the railing and made his way over, forcing himself to stay calm as he pulled open the door. Mr. Reynolds, one of the officers asked. Yeah. We received a report from your neighbor regarding a dispute. She claims you destroyed her property and threatened her. Ethan let out a slow breath and pinched the bridge of his nose. You've got to be kidding me. The officer's face remained neutral, though Ethan swore he saw a flicker of "here we go again" in his eyes. Would you mind telling us what happened? Not at all. Ethan gestured for them to follow and led them straight to his backyard. This is where she tried to throw a party, without my permission, he explained. She brought in decorators, set up tables, and acted like this was some kind of public venue. He turned to face them. I asked her to leave. That's it. No threats. No destruction of property. Just a firm "get out." The officers exchanged a glance. You have any proof of this? Ethan smirked and held up his phone. Security cameras. Everything's recorded. One officer nodded while the other spoke into his radio. Meanwhile, as if sensing that things weren't going in her favor, Karen suddenly appeared on her porch, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The moment she saw Ethan talking to the cops, she stormed over, her face contorted in fury. There he is, she shrieked, pointing at him as though he had committed a heinous crime. That's him. He ruined my son's party. Stole my decorations. He even threatened me. One officer held up a hand. Ma'am, we're investigating. Karen planted her hands on her hips. Investigating? What's there to investigate? That man is a menace. He's always been a problem in this neighborhood. We've reviewed security footage, the officer interrupted, his tone noticeably firmer. And so far, there's no evidence of a crime. Karen's jaw dropped. No crime? He stole from me. Ethan crossed his arms. You mean when I removed your stuff from my backyard? Yeah, that's called reclaiming my property. The officers looked unimpressed with Karen's theatrics. Ma'am, one of them said, voice laced with exhaustion, we've already explained that this is not a criminal matter. If you continue filing false reports, you could face consequences. Karen's face went through a rapid cycle of emotions, shock, rage, disbelief. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but the officer gave her a warning look. Have a nice day, ma'am, he said, clearly done with her. Karen let out a furious huff, spun on her heel, and stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard that a decorative wreath fell off and landed at her feet. Ethan turned to the officers, his brows raised. So, am I good? One of them smirked. Yeah, you're good. Just keep your cameras rolling. As they left, Ethan took a deep breath, relishing the brief moment of victory. But something told him this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to give up that easily. That night, as he sat on his porch enjoying the rare peace and quiet, he spotted her standing in her yard, phone in hand, whispering furiously to someone. The way she kept glancing toward his house made his stomach tighten. She was plotting. And this time, it wasn't just going to be another false police report. It was going to be something worse. The next morning, Ethan awoke to something far worse than police at his doorstep, his reputation under attack. It started with the whispers. As he stepped outside to collect his mail, he noticed his usually friendly neighbor, Mrs. Dawson, giving him a hesitant, almost pitying look before quickly averting her gaze. Further down the street, two other residents, people who had always greeted him with a friendly nod, were standing on Karen's lawn, listening intently as she waved her hands dramatically, pointing in his direction. Whatever story she was spinning, it was working. One woman frowned in concern, while the other crossed her arms and nodded as if she had already made up her mind. Ethan sighed. Here we go. By midday, it became clear that Karen wasn't just gossiping to a few neighbors, she was waging a full-scale smear campaign. She had taken to the neighborhood's Facebook group, posting a long, tearful message about how Ethan had ruined her child's special day, and how she had only wanted to create a beautiful, wholesome experience for the community. She wrote about how he had screamed at her, threatened her, and even suggested that he had a history of hostility toward families in the neighborhood. The responses were instant. Some people, mostly those who had never spoken to Ethan, jumped to Karen's defense. Wow, some people have no heart. That guy sounds like a total nightmare. Poor Karen. How awful. No child should have their birthday ruined by a selfish neighbor. But then, the other comments started rolling in. Wait, isn't this the same neighbor Karen called the cops on last year because of a suspicious lawnmower? Hold up, Karen, didn't you also claim someone stole your recycling bin and demand a full investigation? Is this the same Ethan you accused of stealing your parking space, the one that wasn't actually yours? The more Ethan scrolled, the funnier it got. Karen's pattern of false accusations had been so relentless over the years that people started comparing notes, and suddenly, her victim act wasn't holding up so well. Seeing her credibility crumble in real time, Ethan decided to push things further. He left a simple comment, "Hi, Karen. Just wanted to thank you for making me famous. Also, for anyone wondering, I have security footage of everything. Let me know if you want to see the real story." Within minutes, Karen deleted the post. Ethan might have won that round, but Karen wasn't finished. That evening, as he locked up for the night, he spotted movement near his fence. A shadow darting quickly across his yard, too fast for him to catch a good look. His stomach twisted. His security cameras covered most of the area, but not all of it. And Karen was smart enough to know that. The next morning, he woke up to graffiti sprayed across his fence in big, bold letters. "Neighbor from hell." His front yard was trashed, garbage dumped across his lawn, broken eggs splattered against his porch. His fence had several planks ripped off, and a few of his garden decorations were snapped in half. Before Ethan could even process the mess, he heard someone clearing their throat. Standing on the sidewalk, notepad in hand, was an HOA representative. "Mr. Reynolds," the man said, tone clipped and professional. "We need to talk." Ethan exhaled sharply. "Of course we do." The HOA official pursed his lips. "We've received several complaints about your property's condition. This kind of neglect is a violation of the neighborhood appearance standards, and I'm afraid we'll have to issue a fine." Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Wait, you think I did this?" The man raised an eyebrow. "Well, it is your property." Ethan let out a dry laugh. "That's convenient. And let me guess, who exactly filed these complaints?" The man glanced uncomfortably toward Karen's house, where she stood watching with a victorious smirk. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Don't worry," he muttered. "I'll handle it." He grabbed his phone and pulled up his security footage. Unfortunately, Karen had been careful. She had snuck into a blind spot, meaning there was no clear video of her actually vandalizing the yard. Without direct proof, the HOA wasn't interested in hearing his side of the story. Ethan was fined. And Karen? She watched it all unfold with satisfaction, sipping her coffee on her porch like she had just won a battle. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ethan thought Karen had hit rock bottom with her antics, but he underestimated just how deep her pettiness could go. The vandalism, the false police reports, the HOA fines, none of it had been enough for her. She wanted total destruction. And she was about to take things to a level that was far worse than petty neighborhood drama. It started with a phone call from his boss. Ethan had just finished cleaning up the mess Karen had caused in his yard when his phone buzzed. Seeing his manager's name flash across the screen, he frowned. Work calls outside office hours weren't common. "Hey, Ethan," his boss greeted, but there was a hesitance in his voice. "Listen. I got a strange email about you today. Actually, a couple of them." Ethan stiffened. Emails? From who? His boss sighed. Some woman named Karen? She claims to be your neighbor. Says you've been harassing families in your area, creating a hostile environment. She even said the police had to get involved. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second, rage bubbling under his skin. Of course, she did. She attached links to the police reports, his boss continued. And while I see that no charges were filed, the fact that there are multiple reports makes it concerning. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but his boss wasn't finished. And she didn't stop with me, he added. Apparently, she's been reaching out to clients, suppliers, even HR. Ethan gripped his phone tighter. Please tell me you don't believe this. There was a pause. I want to believe you, Ethan. You've been great at your job. But this kind of negative attention isn't good for the company. And if this escalates? The unspoken threat hung in the air. His job was on the line. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, forcing himself to stay calm. I have security footage proving she's been harassing me. She's just mad I wouldn't let her throw a party in my yard. His boss let out a tired breath. Look, I'm not saying you did anything wrong. But perception matters. The company has a reputation to uphold, and if this keeps getting traction. Ethan's stomach twisted. This wasn't just Karen being annoying anymore, she was actively trying to ruin his life. And she wasn't stopping there. The next morning, Ethan discovered that Karen had gone full nuclear. She had posted a public call to action in the neighborhood's online forum, encouraging people to boycott his business, leave negative reviews, and warn others about him. She claimed he was a violent, aggressive neighbor who scared families, and had a history of causing trouble. Some people saw through the lies. Others, unfortunately, did not. Within hours, his company's Google and Yelp pages were bombarded with fake reviews. One-star ratings poured in, written by people he had never met, claiming he was rude, unprofessional, and even dangerous. One review in particular made his blood boil. I wouldn't trust a man like this in any professional setting. If he can treat his neighbors this way, imagine how he treats clients. He slammed his laptop shut, his hands shaking with anger. Karen had escalated this from a neighborhood dispute to a full-blown attack on his livelihood. And that's when Todd, Karen's husband, finally intervened. Ethan had barely stepped outside for air when he spotted Todd standing in the driveway, looking exhausted beyond belief. Marking the first time ever, Todd actually approached Ethan first. Look, man, he started, rubbing the back of his neck. I wanted to give you a heads up. Ethan crossed his arms. A heads up? About what? Todd let out a slow, heavy sigh, as if he were about to say something he really didn't want to. Karen's planning to take this even further, he admitted. She's been calling lawyers all night. Ethan frowned. Lawyers? Todd nodded, looking utterly defeated. She wants to sue you. Says she's gonna make you pay for emotional damages, lost party expenses, and ruining our son's childhood. Ethan stared at him for a long moment before bursting into laughter. Todd didn't laugh. I wish this was a joke, he muttered. But she actually found some shady lawyer who's willing to look into it. Ethan shook his head, still in disbelief. She can't be serious. She is, Todd confirmed grimly. And if that doesn't work, she's already making plans to turn the whole HOA against you. She wants you gone. Ethan's laughter faded. Because that was something Karen might actually be able to pull off. Ethan had had enough. Karen had tried to throw a party in his yard, called the cops on him, sabotaged his reputation, and even attempted to ruin his career. And now, she was threatening legal action and conspiring with the HOA to force him out of the neighborhood. It was time to end this. He spent the next 24 hours gathering every single piece of evidence he had against her. Security footage of her illegally setting up in his yard. Video proof of her false accusations to the police. Screenshots of her slanderous online posts. A record of every fake review she had orchestrated against his business. And, just for good measure, he reached out to a few other neighbors, ones who had also suffered at Karen's hands. Turns out, he wasn't the only one. With enough proof to bury her, Ethan took his case to the HOA board meeting the following week. The room was packed, word had spread fast that Karen was trying to force him out, and even some neutral neighbors had shown up just to see the fireworks. Ethan didn't waste any time. He laid out everything, showing the board, the community, and even a few local reporters exactly how Karen had lied, manipulated, and weaponized the HOA for her own personal vendetta. He played the security footage, displayed the online harassment, and exposed every single one of her dirty tactics. Karen, for the first time, looked truly speechless. By the time Ethan was finished, the mood in the room had shifted completely. People were murmuring. Some looked outright disgusted. Even a few of Karen's usual supporters were glaring at her, realizing they had been played. The HOA president, who had blindly backed Karen before, suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. And then came the final blow. Ethan's lawyer had already drafted a defamation lawsuit against her. If she didn't back off immediately, she would be the one in court, paying for damages. The color drained from Karen's face. Her confidence shattered. And just like that, she backed down. Days later, her husband, Todd, quietly packed his bags and left. Whether he had finally had enough or was just embarrassed to be associated with her, Ethan didn't know. But within a week, Karen's house was put up for sale. To celebrate, Ethan did what Karen had been so desperate to do, he threw a backyard party. The neighbors, now free from her chaos, came in droves. Even Karen's own son, Brandon, showed up, probably glad to get a break from the embarrassment his mother had caused. And in the ultimate poetic justice, the DJ Karen had originally booked for her son's birthday ended up playing at Ethan's party instead. Karen was gone. The neighborhood was at peace. And Ethan? He had won. But the real question is, what would you have done if Karen had been your neighbor? Have you ever had to deal with an HOA or someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them? Share your stories below, let's see who had it worse.